We'll give everybody just a couple of minutes. We've been having some technical issues, so. See some more people coming in. All right, now one more minute and we will begin. All right, everyone. 7 minutes after the hour, so welcome for all the different time zones that are here. I hope everyone's got their cup of coffee or appropriate beverage, as I'm still here on the West Coast. It's still coffee time. I'd like to welcome you to the continuing series on URISA's exemplary systems in government, the ESIGs as we call them. I keep saying excellence in GIS, but in this case, they're interchangeable. So we've had several presentations in the series so far. We heard from the US Virgin Islands, the Virginia 911 system that was there, and North Carolina DOT. All of those recordings of these presentations are on YouTube if you'd like to go back and view them. Today, we are honoring the winner in our single process system category. And those are a single system of applying information technology to a problem. In this case, it's the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and they have a mobile inventory system that they have developed. So I have an extensive background in mobile inventory myself, so I was excited to see this presentation and especially to moderate it. The nomination is online at the URISA website, and what really struck me about this was the phrase "designed radically simple," which is a fantastic design ethic in all applications, especially in mobile inventory, as you've got a lot of people in the field. So I'm excited to hear this. Our presenters today are Julie Mikolajczyk. She's been an Arizona DEQ for 20 years and the GIS manager since February of 2020. And Debby Crouse, who's been in GIS for 8 years, all of which is at ADEQ. So we'll get started here in just a moment. I do want to give a couple of housekeeping rules. This presentation is being recorded, so we will have this recording joining the others on YouTube shortly. Mute yourself if you haven't done so already. And please feel free to ask questions in the application in the Zoom app. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we will have some time at the end where I will present all the questions. So fair warning, we've had a few technical issues. So bear with us if something goes wrong, but thank you all for joining us on a Friday, and we will get started. So Julie, take it away.
Great. Can you guys hear me okay?
You're perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for joining us today as we talk about the system behind the award we received from URISA last year, ADEQ Mobile Compliance Inspections for Waste Programs. So as Rob mentioned, what you should see from this presentation is that there's three main factors that essentially led to our success. Engaging with the customer early and often, continuously improving our processes and products, and ensuring that appropriate technical resources were deployed to solve the problem at hand. Next slide. So our mission at Arizona DEQ is to protect and enhance the public health and the environment in Arizona. And we do that by keeping our vision in mind to be the #1 state in the agency in the nation in balanced, leading edge environmental protection through technical and operational excellence and radical simplicity for both our customers and our staff. Next slide. So what you'll see here is part of our responsibility is regulating thousands of facilities that generate solid waste or operate underground storage tank systems throughout Arizona. To ensure compliance with state and federal regulations, our inspection teams visit hundreds of facilities every year, and they do both routine inspections and they perform inspections in response to citizen complaints. Next slide. So those thousands of facilities are unfortunately not conveniently located near the ADEQ headquarters in downtown Phoenix. Given that Arizona is the 6th largest state in the nation based on size, our inspectors spend a lot of time driving between headquarters and either the populated places where there are these facilities or sometimes places that are not populated. So these places would be hundreds of miles away. Many of these facilities might also not have cell phone service, or the cell connectivity might be limited. So this small team of inspectors, they spend a lot of time on inspections. And the one thing that we may not be able to mitigate for is the travel time. So ultimately, it took several days for the responsible parties to receive the results of their inspections so that they could begin resolving any issues. And what we were looking for is a more efficient process. Once an inspection has been scheduled, the work begins to prepare it. Inspectors will research the history of inspections at a facility and then prepare the inspection form that needs to be completed in the field. They'll fill it in with information about the facility, the owners, details of the assets on site. Those are things that would be noted from previous inspections or from permit applications. The photos from previous inspections would be reviewed, and any case notes would also be reviewed. That'll give the inspectors an idea of what to expect when they get in the field. Inspectors take their prepared forms, their filled out checklists, and at the time they would take them out on their laptops or Windows tablet or the paper, and they would go to the facility and complete the inspection. The records at the facility were reviewed and documented, photos of inspected assets were taken, and then the checklist of items to be reviewed is completed. The notes that they were taking during the inspection would be recorded on paper, or they would be typed up from the vehicle on the laptop in a fillable Word document. Once back in the office, the reports were completed and sent to the responsible party. So this process involved transcribing the data from those handwritten notes onto an electronic form, or if a laptop was used in the field, the process was a little bit easier, copy paste. But either way, once the reports were completed, the information from the inspector had to be manually entered into AzDEQ, which is our business database. And then records were scanned for electronic filing. So as you might imagine, there's several areas of inefficiency that could be improved. These included populating historic information into the forms before the inspection could be completed. Once in the field, the equipment that we had available, either laptops or 2-in-1 tablets, made it hard to take notes and maneuver around the facilities at the same time. So after the inspections were completed, the manual transcription process also introduced the potential for errors. Ultimately, there was a delay in getting the inspection results to the responsible party. This last pain point meant that it would take longer for a customer to be able to return their facility to compliance, and that is ultimately what we were trying to address. So we set an agency goal of completing 80% of our inspections from the field. This project was unique in that the program staff in solid waste were also researching how to make a mobile application work for them. So the GIS team was very lucky to have engaged and knowledgeable end users for this pilot. After reviewing and gaining an understanding of the current workflow, we brainstormed potential requirements, identified gaps that where we might focus our efforts to achieve the most benefit. What we also wanted to do was go out in the field with the inspectors, learn from them, see where those pain points were and how they affected the process, how it affected the workflow. So the GIS team accompanied the inspectors on site inspections to see those things for themselves. So ultimately, we started with some notable features for the solid waste project. We used iPads. We gained iPads from the instead of the Windows tablets. iPads were more convenient to use in the field. Esri Survey 123, we deployed that in ArcGIS online so that it would be available from the web. We used paper checklists, those transformed into smart mobile forms. So the information would have dependencies where needed and make things really simple and straightforward for the staff filling them out. We used webhooks to create those reports at the end and copy those documents onto Google Drive. And then we had automations put in place through Integromat. Integromat is just a way of connecting different processes together and through webhooks. So you can see here, some of our processes are pretty comprehensive, complicated, I guess is a better word, but some could be pretty straightforward, just 2 steps. And then what we ended up doing was updating the business database. Rather than having the customer or the end user have to go back to the office, transcribe that data back into the database, we had a process in Survey 123 where that could be done for them. And then the reports section is something that is worth noting here, the value of it. There were lots of ways, lots of requirements as far as our reports go. They had to be professional looking. They had to fit our brand standards. They had to have legal components built in. We provided a way that we could capture signatures and record those on the reports. So the Debbie, advance please. We also allowed a way for photos to be collected and watermarked so that you could see where that photo was taken, the latitude and longitude, and in some versions we have the facility information recorded. Could we advance please? And then the end report had those signatures printed out. The terms and conditions, the rules and responsibilities for the customers were identified and presented in a format that made this a legal standing document, which was very, very important to us. So with these improvements in equipment, especially the iPads, we saw increased efficiency. The inspectors could go out, they could have that information right there available to them. They could navigate through areas where there's bulky equipment or dangerous conditions with large equipment around. And so that was a safety concern, is that we didn't want our staff to have to juggle multiple pieces of equipment, and the iPad really made that possible. So what we ended up seeing were some improvements in the process. And you can see here, this trend is not a straight shot up. It's not a, we went from 0 to 80% and there was no dips. There were things that went poorly, things that went well. And so there were ebbs and flows in the improvement. But within a year, this isn't even a whole year's worth of data, we were able to issue 83% of our inspections for solid waste from the field. This chart is a little difficult to read, so I'm going to show you in a little bit more detail, but essentially it shows the 3 different types of the phases of inspections and where we saw some improvements. So if we focus on the areas over to the right of the chart, you can see here used oil processors. Ultimately, we saved on that one over the 458 inspections that we've done in Survey 123, or since we've launched Survey 123, 3 hours of savings, 63% decrease in what it took before. So the next one is, so here's the used oil transfer facility. That savings was a little bit less, and you can see there was actually an increase in time on one of them. But as an average, still 34% savings. And then the next one is our largest one that you can see, 86% savings. It took less than an hour, just about an hour to complete, where it used to take more than 7 for these used oil transporters. So this is great savings, great data that we were able to use and show. So some of the comments from our inspectors related to things like we were able to reduce the pre-inspection, post-inspection process, greater accuracy, higher frequency, fewer interruptions, especially when they were in the field and completing their inspections. And then having these metrics that you can see here in this chart, they're automatically generated. So simply by using the tool, and that means that they were able to use what they were seeing, what they were experiencing to make data-driven decisions. So some of the challenges that we had with the solid waste deployment was that we used ArcGIS Online, and that came with a credit usage. The reports were not free, and at the time that we deployed it, they were actually more expensive than what they are right now. They went down pretty tremendously over the last year or so. But we did generate and use quite a few credits. The named users were relatively more expensive. We didn't have an unlimited number of viewer licenses. We had to pay $100 for everybody that we just wanted to be able to see the data. Overwriting our survey broke the script that we had in place. It would create a new URL, and our scripts had been written to use the URL to make the connections. So that would break, and that meant that the updating of the business database was not able to happen. And just in general, besides that, it didn't address the inefficiencies in travel or pre-work. Next slide, please. So with this increased efficiency, though, we could see and we could share with others in the agency how much they could improve their processes by adopting a Survey 123 workflow. And you can see that here. We've launched apps for surface water protection and underground injection controls, hazardous waste, remedial projects, emergency response, air quality monitors. Just several others have really been able to use this form-based data collection method. So our next group that wanted to transform their workflow was underground storage tank. This was the tank inspections and compliance enforcement unit. We wanted to make some changes in the process that we had put in place before. Those challenges that you saw on a previous slide, we wanted to change them to start using ArcGIS Enterprise instead of ArcGIS Online. We wanted the data to live in Oracle instead of in ArcGIS's cloud servers. This team wanted to use their Android phones instead of iPads. We were able to pull data from the business database and populate it into the survey live. So that list of inspections that they had available to them is updated every day as soon as they have a web connection. We wanted to update the business database in a, sorry, could you go back, please? Update the business database in a more efficient manner. And then we also wanted to automate and send the reports to the customers at the time of inspection. So before with solid waste, they sent them to the inspectors at the time of inspection. The inspectors would do some QA/QC and then issue it to the responsible party. But in this case, we wanted to actually issue it to the customer right then. Next slide. So there were some gotchas on this one, some challenges here. This was our first time using ArcGIS Enterprise for this, and definitely our first time using Oracle as the back end. So some things that we discovered was that connecting to the Esri report server required us to configure our enterprise system to be public facing. So we had to deal with certificates and other configurations on the load balancer. We did build the entire data structure in Oracle SDE, and that made schema changes much more difficult to update than we anticipated. So when a question needed to be changed in the survey, it also needed to be changed in the database, and those two needed to match exactly. So it was a bit of a challenge there. There were also some quirks in the Oracle system that we weren't expecting or didn't really know how to address. Some of those are listed here, and there were others. They were definitely not expected, and they did add more time troubleshooting these issues to our deployment. But we do have some measured successes here. Reduction in touch time, improved customer experience, and that was from being able to issue complete and accurate reports from the field. And this last one is very interesting as well. Improved consistency in issuing the violations. We were able to put those items in drop-down lists so that the inspectors didn't need to freeform type anything out in that area. And that improved our consistency. And these comments here are from the unit manager at the time. Those are improvements that she saw. So then we moved on to our last work unit within the waste programs. This is hazardous waste. Some of the notable features about this particular deployment was we again used Esri Survey 123. We used ArcGIS Enterprise, but instead of putting the data all in an Oracle database to begin with, we used a hosted data service, data storage system. And then we wrote to Oracle just the information that was needed for the ultimate updating of the data in our business database. We also needed to accommodate for this one having two inspectors in the field, one taking photos and one filling out the report. So we ended up having two surveys, and they, through Integromat, get combined in the end. We also wanted to make sure that we were able to take those improvements that we made in these other versions, and we put them into solid waste version 2. So now we have brought them into Enterprise. We have brought them into Oracle. We've made those improvements. We have multiple JavaScript pull data now, which we didn't have any pull data before. So we made some improvements there in that area as well. And then for the future, there's just some things that we'd like to work on, and we still have on our plate. We need to do more checklists for the landfills, landfill inspections. Surface water protection, we've been working on. We've launched one version of Survey 123 for them, and there's another version coming out soon. Groundwater, underground injection control, those are both coming. And one of those things that we mentioned in the beginning was that we couldn't really improve the efficiency of travel time. But maybe if we incorporated something like Esri Workforce, we'd be able to make some inroads in that area as well. And ultimately, having all of this data in Oracle or in these GIS systems will allow us to analyze the data better. We'll be able to see trends in inspection compliance and changes over time in a much easier way than we could before. And then I'll hand it over to Debbie. She'll get you through some of the details of what we did.
Hi, I'm Debbie Crouse. I have been the Survey 123 evangelist at ADEQ Several years ago when it came out, I was sounding the trumpet within a lot of the different units saying this will work so much better for you guys, and it took years for them to decide maybe this is a good thing. So we made a flow chart here. When we start with the customer driving the request, they need to have their checklist and forms ready. And we're going to hit this point really hard throughout what we're talking about. That they have to have their checklist ready. Then we build the survey in Survey 123 Connect. We publish it, have them test it. We do the edits and changes, and keep updating and making sure that it all looks like what they want it to look like. Then I turn it over to someone who knows how to write the code to pull the data from the database and to set up the SDE staging tables. And we send it to IT to have them develop triggers and updates for pulling data in and out of the database. And in the meantime, we build the automation in Integramat, which now goes by Make. They changed their name. We have our customer again look at it and test it. Then we have more testing by us and the user. And once the product meets all the requirements, we turn it over to the customer and train the unit on the use of Survey 123 and all of the components, which for many that have been doing inspections the old way, sometimes that's not an easy thing to have them do the changeover. So our project objective is, the whole goal is to make the inspections more accurate and more efficient for the inspectors and for the customers. So how do we do that? Well, we build in multiple choice and drop downs. The less we can have our inspectors type and not fat finger things, the more accurate and efficient everything is. We can use relevant statements. For instance, if this question is answered yes or no, then another question shows up or doesn't show up depending on the answer to that first question. We can pull data from our database and or CSV. We can auto-generate the reports and auto-generate email and storage. So as I said, we begin with the checklist, and this particular checklist happens to be for used tires, and this is what it looked like before we got a hold of it, basically. And so there are different types of questions you can build in. Like this particular one, it says the facility name. That would be a text question. And the inspection type, whether it's waste tires or waste tires at a landfill or a processing facility or an unregistered one, those are multiple choice, and that's called the select multiple question. And then there are select one questions if you only can do one answer, like if it's a yes or a no. And here's a relevant question. The question before, if that question happens to be yes, then the next question is shown to the inspector. And if that question is no, the inspector doesn't even see that follow-up question. So we build it in Survey 123 Connect. And you build it using an Excel that is specific to the Connect. And it is a process. So for the question type, like I said, this one shows like there's a text type, there's a date, there's a select multiple, there's a select one. And those are telling the survey what kind of questions they are. The question label here is actually what the inspector sees and what question they need to ask the customer or answer within the inspection. And then there are different question styles. You can do different calculations in there, and this is where you put in your relevant statements. As you can see with the relevant here, it says if it's selected, the inspection checklist used oil, it won't show up for the inspector unless they have checked the used oil. I'll show you that down the road a little bit. And you can see there's one, it has an additional part to it that says, and the oil ACT equals yes. That's irrelevant. If the question before was answered yes, then that question would show up, and that's how you write that relevancy in there. So the inspector sees this. This is like the front page, the cover page, and they have the opportunity in the inspection checklist down the way. The checklist can be chosen on the front page and only show up if they are checked. So like the waste tire one here was not checked, and so when the inspector goes to the next page throughout the inspection collection, if they didn't check on the waste tire, it doesn't show up. In this case, they did click on the transfer facility, and that checklist will show up. And when you build the choices tab for a select multiple or select one, the second tab is for choices. And if you have a select one, like this particular one has select one for a yes, no, or NA. And so those have to be formatted in the background. Like the select one county, we list all of the counties so that they don't have to type those out and they can just click on it. And then there are different types of specific to that unit or that checklist. Like this one is for timing, and the disposal frequency was daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And those choices need to be in the background, and then in green is what the inspector sees and can click on one of those things. If there's an opportunity where they need to select multiple, meaning they can choose, like for this particular type for waste type, they can choose household and green waste and appliances and tires and pay and e-waste. All of those are formatted then in the background so they can choose any or all of those choices. So how to get data pulled into the survey? We can auto-populate from the CSV and or pull data directly from our Oracle database. So that's built into Connect, and that information then shows up in the survey for the inspector to see. So in the appearance column, what we have done for this is the UST, the underground storage tanks. The available inspection numbers become a drop-down list. So again, we don't have to worry about finger stutters or fat fingers so that they put in wrong numbers or anything. They have to choose a drop-down that ensures accurate numbers for each of the inspections. And so what the inspector sees is just this drop-down, and then they click on the appropriate number for the inspection. Then because of that inspection ID is tied to a particular facility, that information and the URLs are put into the scripts tab of Connect. And then when the inspector clicks on the inspection number, all of that information that we have in our database autofills into like the facility ID, the facility name, anything that's in the database, like the responsible party info, addresses, any of those kind of things that you want to pull, you can pull and autofill into the survey. Anytime we can keep the inspectors from typing things in there, we add to our accuracy and efficiency. So when we have that information, once the survey is sent up to the cloud, and I'll show you what that looks like on the back end in a minute, the report templates can then be printed. So this is just a simple generic one that I put together that you can see the name of the facility, the description, what the date, how that would look out in a report, and just a photo there. And then that information you need to do on the templates so that you need to code them with the $ and the curly braces so that the report knows where to drop that information. It's kind of confusing until you see it in practice here. So if we go to survey123.arcgis.com and look at our surveys, this is where all of our surveys live. And the data shows within a map and or a table. And as you click on a specific one, the panel on the right shows all of that information. And then somebody who has admin privileges can even edit that information and that report. And you can see all the orange dots are the inspections that were done, and the blue dot next to Lake Havasu City, that this company happens to be in Lake Havasu City, that and so it highlights where that is. And this is where we put in the templates for the reports. If you want to print out your report, you go into this tab and do the Manage Templates, and then you can upload each of the templates. You can see we have here for the WTCS, means waste tires. We have for composting. We have the cover page with the photo log. We have an exit debriefing and various other checklists. They can be generated by hand by clicking on that Generate button, and you can generate as a Microsoft Word doc or a PDF. And on this tab, if you go all the way to the right and click on the Settings tab, this is where the webhooks are that IntegraMat uses to grab that information from. So here's a report template that is a real one for our solid waste inspection reports. You can see they have the $ curly brace with the question name. And here's what it looks like up nice and close so that you can see it. One of the issues we had on the upper right-hand corner, you can see the inspection report ID number, and it has all of that little coding and everything. And we had to use that to get around whether or not our Oracle used a integer or a decimal base or a number base, and in order to get it to, so it wouldn't put in the comma, it would put in the thousands comma in the middle of our inspection report IDs. And so we had to do some serious looking to figure out how to have that spit it out so that it didn't have the comma. So here's what it looks like once it's filled out. All that information drops into the specific boxes within the tables. And you can see that inspection report does not have a comma because it had that get value thing. You can see that we have the initials on the front page here. The facility person that's on site can put in their initials as well as the inspector. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that they have their actual signatures. All of the check marks there are all of the legal checks that need to be done for the notice of inspection rights. And these have passed muster for being legal documents, even though they are written and signed within an electronic version. We can also print the photos with any of the information that you want to pull from the survey. We have the facility name, the responsible party, place ID, any kind of description that they want to put. And you'll notice that we have watermarks on the photos. There's a close-up of that. You can see that we have put in there, you can customize these watermarks. This has the lat long, the direction that they are standing when they take the picture, the date and the time. And you can, like I said, you can customize those, and I'll show you another one where we've added a couple other things to that. So once it's published out there and being used, can you change it? Yes and no. This is where all the value of pre-planning and testing shows its value. You can make tweaks to some types of questions and everything will be fine. But you have to be very careful which types of questions you change. And if Connect warns you that it might lose data, you better listen to it. So if you change the question type, that's going to throw some problems for you. And you can do repeats within there. And I didn't show the repeats, but that's one of the things that can also trip you up. So if it tells you it might trash your data, there's a good chance it will. So don't take the chance. Been there, done that. So automating our surveys with IntegraMat. So this is the solid waste one. As a close-up, we have it watch the survey. We have it create a folder in Google Drive, and then the filters filter into each of the checklists. This is where you put in your webhook that IntegraMat actually kind of magically goes and finds for you. It's pretty cool. And then you put in where the templates live, so that like this particular one is the used oil. And then this is what it looks like on the back end when it dumps all of that information into our Google Drive. and or you can have it emailed directly. I'm on the email string for this one. This happens to be a water stream survey, and it sends me an email and the actual report attached to it. So the automation can go beyond just the report. It can go into Google Drive. It can keep track of our flow board, which is in Trello, and there are many tools that can be used for that automation. We have electronic boards to keep track of our tasks and projects, and we can have it right on specific boards and even alert other people that that card has been made and written to. We can put the information into dashboards. This is a UST inspection dashboard. Inspections can be displayed on a map for viewing pop-ups of results. The green ones are in compliance, red or not. You can click on it and see all the information that's in the actual survey there. And the UST team asked that they have something so that they could see their photos. And you can see in this photo, all the photos can be viewed on the left-hand side. The inspections can be filtered by date, so you can look for a specific one, and then it's viewed on a map. And notice that the watermarks can be placed anywhere you want and be formatted in different colors and make them available so that you can see them. So as we have implemented these improvements, we have moved from inefficient means to utilization of tools that provide better accuracy and efficiency for our staff as well as for our customers, which has allowed us to have technical and operational excellence and radical simplicity for our customers and staff. Some of our lessons learned. We need to be sure to have metrics set up prior to deploying your new inspection workflow so you can see where there are benefits to help assess your return on investment and areas where further improvements can be considered. Be sure to have the customers ready before you get started. Those checklists have got to be ship-shape. If there are changes to the checklist after you've already built the survey, it probably needs to be changed in multiple places, resulting in rework. And automation is good, but the more dependent you are on technology, the bigger impact when something goes down. So we've had some times when IntegraMat had some hiccups, or Esri had some hiccups with Survey 123 when they did an update, and when that went down, we had to do some scrambling and get some things taken care of right away because, as Julie talked about, we have our inspectors all over the state, and sometimes, you know, they're out in 100-degree weather, and we want to make sure that they can get those reports to the customers as quickly as possible. Testing should include a mock inspection where all of the aspects of the inspection are reviewed. This also serves as a training session. Ideally, this is done by all the staff who will be using the app and will be done early enough that if changes need to be made, they will have minimum impact on your timelines. We had our hazardous waste team set up a mock inspection, and they printed out pictures of what they would find in some of their inspections and just stuck them on the wall. And then they pretended they were actually at a facility and ran through the survey. And I was there with them to help walk them through and to talk about any problems that they had. And then I could see also that what changes they needed and wanted, and I could make those sometimes right there on the spot and fix it for them right there. So our culture is one of continuous improvement, but the concepts of change management still apply. We had early adopters, which many in the solid waste unit were, which was really super nice. They were very helpful. They were young, eager, and technologically savvy versus some reluctant staff that were the opposite of what I just said. So expect things to take a bit longer at the beginning, but once you get rolling, that efficiency really starts bumping up. Be careful in how you name and color your surveys. We found that you can't make the word draft too big or appear too often. Otherwise, we have had data submitted to the wrong survey sometimes when they didn't understand that they were still working in the draft one and they should be in the new live one. And working across a dev and a production enterprise environment, was difficult to coordinate and synchronize. But all of those growing pains and all of those gotchas have definitely been worth all of the back end work and sometimes frustration, and to see our inspectors be pleased with the product that we have put out there, and to be able to help them achieve their 80% inspection issuance in the field. It has been super exciting and rewarding for us to do that. We appreciate your attention, and if there are questions or anything that we can help you with, we would be glad to help you with that.
Fantastic. Actually, I'm scribbling down questions here because there have been a couple, but some other things occurred to me as well. So thank you. Thank both of you for your presentation on this. This is really, really well done. We did have one question in the Q&A box here, and I think you answered it, but I think we could go into a little bit more explanation. Have you been able to implement this to other disciplines at ADEQ other than solid waste?
Yes, we several of our mostly in the waste division, but our air division has done it for surveying their monitors and keeping track of those. Our water division has, I think, 4 different units on it, and we have, I believe, 6 within our waste that we're doing it. So we have, 10 to 15 different units, different types of surveys out there that we are working with throughout our agency. Remember, we didn't explain, but our division, we have an air division, water division, and waste division, and within those we have different units. So yes, we have several units on this, and all seem to be very happy with it.
Perfect. I'm saving that. That actually led into a question that I had, which is, have you now become the default support team for this, or is there a separate group that was trained to run it, or is it standalone?
It's mostly
how is the ongoing operations?
Yeah, the GIS team does most of the support for it. Our air division, quite a couple of years ago, kind of took off and ran on their own, and had somebody who was savvy with the Survey 123 and wrote their own surveys, and they're up to, I believe, version 4 now for all of theirs. And they have a survey for each of the monitors and monitor types that they have. So they have about, I think it's 40 separate surveys that they have, and they're up to version 4 on all of those. And they are pretty self-sustained with that. But as we get further into this and have more automation, the solid waste team is pretty close to being self-sufficient on there. And as we get people more in there that have a little bit more experience, then we will be able to, not be so involved in every day-to-day thing.
One thing to add on to that is also that within the GIS team, the 4 of us that were listed there as SMEs we have different areas of specialization. So we can be generalists on various topics, but ICO, for example, helps us a lot with the JavaScript and the connecting to the Oracle, and Brenna with the Integromat. So those are the sort of ways that we've been able to spread the work within the GIS team as well.
That was led into another question that I had, which was, obviously you had a multidisciplinary team there, but what was, and maybe I missed it, what was the time from concept to deployment? And what skills did you need that you didn't have before?
Debbie, do you want to take that one? Start with solid waste?
Sure. Solid waste, we started with their checklist. And again, like I said, they were we actually had 2 or 3 other people kind of started, UST semi-started, but solid waste said, hey, we really want to do this. And they jumped to the head of the line because they were so excited about it and willing to do the, you know, all the testing and all the stuff that kind of gets you down when you're starting a new program and everything. And like I said, because they were young and tech savvy, they were able to help and be really good advocates on our side, and also working with IT. So from probably the very beginning up to where they were all the way live and using it on a daily basis and getting their data in and out of the database, it was probably 8 months to a year for all of that. And for what we had to do to get there is just a lot of practice within Survey 123 Connect, and a lot of, you know, trial and error testing.
Oh, I know from experience that developing the reports to make them look exactly like the standard output is,
Right.
you know, surprisingly time consuming. I will share that one time in another project like this, I fixed the typos that I found in a form, and the client, who shall remain nameless, made me go back and put the typos back in because they were concerned that the form wouldn't be taken seriously.
Okay.
So hopefully you didn't have that, but so much for continuous.
No, we had people say, you know, you need to go in and change this. There's a comma when it should be a semicolon. There's an extra space here, and, you know, change this to, you know, put an apostrophe here. And so we had like the opposite. It had to be exactly
You're lucky.
perfect.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
So, seeing no other questions, I'm going to throw another one in here. Did you have to make any adjustments to the UI, UX, the color schema once you got out in the field or tested to account for visibility or color blindness or anything else like that?
We did not. Most of the color things that I used background-wise were, I was aware of what that would look like out in the sunshine, because especially with the iPads, sometimes you get glare and that kind of thing. So I made sure, you know, I was in the Color Brewer app and things to make sure that all of those worked, that they were. And, you know, I'm running around outside at my house since we work remotely. I'm out in the front yard or the backyard and seeing what it looks like in the sun, and making sure that all of those are legible. Some of the colors were, I put like a bright orange color when we were using it for testing, so that when we went to live and the real thing, I had to make sure, hey, make sure your background is not orange. Your background now is, you know, light blue or whatever, so that we could make sure that we made that delineation very obvious of whether or not they were in a testing mode or in an actual live survey.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, very savvy. I'm sorry, I missed your previous question, Curtis, but Curtis just put it in the Q&A. How many named users did you need to add, and how do you manage them as people come and go?
So within ArcGIS Online, I think we started with 20 or so named users. When we moved into Enterprise, we were able to get an unlimited number of viewer licenses, which is fantastic. And we've connected everything with Okta. So it's a single sign-on. If somebody leaves the agency, we don't have to do much besides delete their account if they've created any content. We've added in about 40 field worker named users, and that has supplemented the 50 creators that we get from ArcGIS Enterprise. So we're probably about 110 people besides viewers right now.
Excellent. All right, well, we are coming up, actually it is the top of the hour. I know we got a little bit of a late start. Julie and Debbie, I do want to say we had a request for your presentation. If you would make it available, if you were willing to make it available to people for their use. I don't know if you're willing to do that, but I'm going to tell the crowd here that if they would
Sure.
like.
What's the best way for us to get that out to people?
I was thinking that if it looks like most people have stayed on, if you'd like to take the email addresses down.
Nope, if you'd like to go ahead and email me the presentation and I will
Okay.
post it with the website, webinar information online, and everybody will have access to that and the recording when we get it set.
Sure. And feel free to email me with questions or anything. And with any hiccups you're having with Survey 123, I'll be glad to help. And we have swapped Excels to go in and out of Connect with other agencies in California and Washington and that kind of thing. So no problem with sharing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Again, this fantastic presentation here, Debbie and Julie. We got through all this without any technical glitches, so that's a great way to start the Friday. And the entire team looks like they were on the presentation today, so well done for all of you. I can say that the ESIG nominations for this year have closed, but it's a rolling basis, so they're definitely, I think we could all probably name fantastic systems that are deserving of the type of attention that Julie and Debbie and the entire team put together here. So please keep an eye out for nominations and get them ready for next year. This year's ESIG winners will be presented at GIS Pro in Boise in October. All the information, including ESIG nominations, are available on the URISA website. So please hope to see you in Boise and look for more presentations here. So thank you very much, and everyone have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you all.